Hello and welcome to 15 Minutes of English. My name is Laurie and I'm an online English teacher. In today's episode of 15 Minutes of English for Beginners, we are going to be looking at the past tense. Now, there are lots of different past tenses in English, and today we are going to look at the past simple. Now, this is a tense that you will likely use the most when you're speaking English because we use it for lots of different things, but the annoying thing about this tense is that there is a very simple, regular way of making this tense, likely what you were taught at school, which is to add ed at the end of a verb. But the majority of the verbs that we use the most often in English, so all of the words that you use very commonly, all the time, are irregular, meaning they don't fit the pattern, right? There are lots of these irregular verbs in English. Now, let's have a look at these verbs that we've got here. If you're studying along at home, then I would recommend you pause the video and have a go at writing down the past simple of these verbs. Be careful if you think you know them already. Be careful not to mix them up with the past participle. There we go. But otherwise, I will go through them. Try and think of a sentence to go with it as well. I think that is one of the best ways to learn, is to put them into a practice. So I will say the past simple of the verb and give you a little sentence for it. Okay, so go becomes went. So went is very irregular. I went to the park yesterday. I went to the park yesterday. Climb becomes climbed. That is regular. So here we got that ed pattern at the end. Now, one thing I should say before we continue is that whereas in the present things change depending on the person. So I go, you go, he goes. We've got that extra S for the third person in English. In the past simple, we don't do that, right? It's all the same. So I went, you went, he went, she went, they went. It's all the same, which is very nice if you're learning. You don't have to learn any other conjugations, other than the fact that they are very irregular sometimes. Now, the next one though, be, the first person of this was, going against what I just said. Be is one of the only verbs which changes in the past simple. So I was and you were, right? This is very irregular. It doesn't fit the pattern of adding ed, obviously. Yeah, there we go. Be, I was at the park yesterday and you were at the swimming pool. There we go. Easy peasy. Take. What does take become in the past simple? Take is took, right? One thing to notice about this is it has a double O, but it's not oo, it is u. It's a short sound, took. And it is irregular, obviously. It doesn't have ed at the end. So I took my wife to the cinema. We went to the cinema together. There we go. Took and went. The next one here, have. Have is irregular. We got had. I had an ice cream for lunch. It's not true. That would be very unhealthy. Okay, the next one, can. In the past tense is could. This one is irregular. When I was 6 years old, I could tie my shoelaces. I can tie my shoelaces now as well, but I could do it when I was 6 years old. Right. The next one there is sit. The past tense of that is sat. I sat on the train yesterday. There we go. Get becomes got. That one is also irregular. I got a pizza delivered yesterday. Got. Want becomes wanted. That is regular. I really wanted to eat pizza, so I ordered pizza. There we go. Think becomes thought, which is irregular. I thought I wanted pizza, but actually I wanted hot dogs. Decide, kind of decided is regular. I decided to buy hot dogs instead of pizza. Said. The pizza guy said, you should have canceled your order. Here is a pizza. I spent, spend, becomes spent. I spent lots of money and lots of time eating pizzas and hot dogs all by myself. Feel, the last word there, feel becomes felt. I felt very sad after eating pizzas and hot dogs. Now, you don't have to make a silly story like I did, but I would recommend that you try and make some sentences with those verbs. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at is how to make questions and negatives in the past simple, because unfortunately it is not as simple. So you might be tempted to ask someone, where went you at the weekend, right? Kind of, it seems to make sense. You're using the past simple, and you make a question using it. However, that's not really how it works. And if you watched our video on the present simple, you will remember that for questions and negatives, we need to use an auxiliary verb, right? So you can say, I eat chicken. For the question, you would say, do you eat chicken? And for the negative, you would say, I don't eat chicken. So that's for the present simple. For the past simple, we also need to use some extra words. So, for example, we can use was and were. For example, here we got, it wasn't really a party, just some friends came over, right? There we go. It wasn't really a party. Was it a long flight home? Were there many people on your flight? There we go. Another way to make questions about the past simple, you can use could. I wanted to take some more photos, but I couldn't find my phone. There we go. Couldn't. Couldn't you find a better place to park? Right? So yeah. Okay. The other thing is that you can use did or do, right? I didn't want to leave, right? One thing that maybe you might be tempted to say would be say, I wanted not to leave. And we just don't say that in English. You need to use an auxiliary verb. So if someone asks you, was it a long flight home? You can say it wasn't. Were there many people on your flight? There weren't. Did you want to leave? No, I didn't want to leave. Did you finish your homework? No, I didn't. So the did there is in the past. The auxiliary verb goes in the past, and the main verb does not, right? Did you finish your homework? It's not did you finished your homework. I didn't wanted to leave. That is wrong. We want it to be I didn't want to leave. Did you finish your homework? There we go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Right. As a practice, we have this little short story about going on holiday to Scotland. And if you're studying along, I would recommend that you try and fill in the gaps by yourself. Otherwise, we can go through the answers together. So, 2 summers ago, we a holiday in Scotland. So we need to change the word have into the past simple. So 2 summers ago, we had a holiday in Scotland. We drive there from London. So drive in the past tense becomes drove. We drove there from London, but our car break down. So break in the past tense is broke. Our car broke down on the motorway, and we spend, you will remember that is spent. We spent the first night in Birmingham. When we got to Edinburgh, we went to our hotel. So go becomes went. But they, right. So we've got not and can. Right. So how are we going to put that into the past? We're going to make couldn't. But they couldn't find our reservation. And they, now we got be. So you will remember from the previous slide that be can be one of two things. It can be was and it can be were. Now, you might find it quite funny if you ever listen to native speakers speaking, that some of them, they mix them up. So you will spend lots of time learning the language, and native speakers speak badly. But if you are learning the language, I guess you should learn it properly. So here we need to use the plural, right? So we got they. And that will be were, right? I was, you were, he was, they were. We not know what to do. Okay, so you remember that for a negative we need to use an auxiliary verb, and that auxiliary verb is going to be do. So we didn't know. We didn't know what to do. But in the end, we find in the past is found. But in the end, we found a bed and breakfast, and we stayed there. Stay in the past tense. Stayed there for the week. We see. Now, see is irregular. We saw the castle, and buy is past tense. Is irregular as well, and it becomes bought. But in the end, we found a bed and breakfast, and we stayed there for the week. We saw the castle and bought a lot of souvenirs. We wanted to go to Loch Ness, but we didn't have, so we got not have there. We need to put in the auxiliary verb, do, put it in the past tense, did, and we need to make it negative. We can put not, and we can contract it, make it didn't, and we have. So we didn't have much time, and it was quite far away. Be, going back to was, it was quite far away. The weather, right? So we've got be again, but this time we want it to be negative. So we're going to make it wasn't, right? The weather wasn't very good. It started raining on the day we left London. I don't know why there isn't a thing there. There should be the word left before London, and it never stopped. Now, I think this is quite a typical holiday in Scotland, dealing with the rain. I've been on holiday to Edinburgh, and it did rain quite a lot. It's a very beautiful city, though. I would recommend it. I hope you managed to get most of those correct without me telling you. Yeah, there we go. Okay, past simple. Now, we've got some practice of making questions in the past simple. So you've got all of the answers there. You've got the answers to the questions, and you need to make those questions, right? So we've got the answer here. We went to Vancouver. And the second half of the sentence, which is on holiday last year. And what are we going to put at the beginning? We're going to say, where did you go on holiday last year? Where did you go? Now, we know that it has to be where, because in the answer, it gives us a place. It says Vancouver, place in Canada. You could say, did you go on holiday last year? That is a perfectly acceptable question. But the answer would just be yes. It would not have a place in it. Yeah, okay. Now, they are asking a second question. Wow, a good time. Yes, we had a great time. Okay, so what are we going to put in here? We're going to say, did you have a good time? Now, British speakers, especially, they will mix the D and the Y in did you. They won't say did you. They will say did you. Did you have a good time? If you're speaking quickly. Now, it's not overly important for you to copy that, but it is important for you to understand when people say it. So, did you have a good time? Yeah, we had a good time. We had a great time. Yeah, okay. The next one, I went with my family. And the question ends with, okay? So we could say, who did you go with? Who did you go with? I went with my family. The next one, we stayed in a hotel. We stayed in a hotel. Where did you stay? We stayed in a hotel. They were quite expensive, about €1,000. The flights, right? The flights. So how are we going to ask about the cost? The cost of the flights, because we got the money there, €1,000. We want to know about the price of the flights. So how much did the flights cost? How much did the flights cost? Yeah, so how much did the flights cost? Okay. It was hot and sunny most of the time. There you go. It was hot and sunny most of the time. And we got the weather like. So how are we going to make that question? We're going to use was. What was the weather like? Now you see, here we didn't use do because we don't have a main verb there. In all of the other ones, we've got a verb, right? Where did you go? Did you have? Did you go? Where did you stay? Did the flights cost? So cost is the verb there. But what was the weather like? There is no other verb. So was is the main verb. There we go. If we look back at my other questions, I have to go back a little bit. The questions and negative bits with was and were, they don't have an extra verb, right? Was it a long flight home? Were there many people on your flight? It wasn't really a party. See, to be is a verb that you don't need the auxiliary verb, right? So you just put to be directly into the past simple. There we go. Easy peasy. Now, what was the weather like? Okay, and then the last question. We usually went for dinner at a restaurant. We usually went for dinner at a restaurant. What did you do? What did you do in the evening? We usually went for a restaurant. We usually went for dinner at a restaurant. Okay, the last thing that I think we could look at here is a pronunciation thing, although I feel like I've gone a little bit over 15 minutes, but oh well. The last thing that we're going to look at here is the pronunciation thing. I booked a hotel. We missed our flight. Can you hear the difference between I booked a hotel, I arrived at the airport, and she invited us to the party? I booked a hotel, I arrived at the airport, she invited us to the party. Some of the regular past tense, so these are the ones with ed on the end, they have different pronunciations. So some of them have a t sound, some of them have a d sound, and some of them have an id sound. Now, have a look at these verbs and see which category you think they fit in. Call becomes, ask becomes asked. Call becomes called. Check, checked. Decide, decided. Happen, happened. Live, lived. Rent, rented. Start, started. Stop, stopped. Thank, thanked. Want, wanted. Now you'll see if they end in a T or a D, then it becomes an id sound. If you've got a k or a p, you've got a plosive sound, then it's going to become a t sound at the end. And then the other ones will be a d sound. Okay? Thank you very much for sticking with us, and we will see you in the next episode. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you have learned how to pronounce all of the past simple words correctly, and I'll see you in the next episode.